Well, welcome back to Crypto Questions, and in today's video we asked ChatGPT about Ethereum and whether it was inflationary or deflationary, and we've got some answers that we're going to run through you and share this afternoon. It's quite interesting because the answer changes over the period that you look at, so we thought it was quite timely to consider this with Ethereum just turning 10 years old. You can see from the initial chat reply that the genesis date for Ethereum was just about exactly 10 years ago, July 2015, when there was a zero supply, and that this had grown to a whopping 119.8 million Ethereum by late 2022. Now, you'll also note that here it says this has gently been rising in the recent time up to 2025. So we then asked it to do a little bit of analysis and try and break down some of the reasons and things like hard forks that may have made some of the difference, because over different periods Ethereum seems to have been both deflationary and inflationary depending on network activity. So let's start having a look at this and break it down with you. So Genesis 2015, from zero building up to 118 million by 2018. In 2021 came the pre-London fork. Previously, Ethereum, if you remember, had been proof of work, with the network being maintained by miners who were paid Ethereum for the processing work that they did. Up until this time, there was no burn mechanism in existence, so Ethereum's supply generally and consistently increased over that period. So it had an inflationary phase as that supply built up to 118. Then came the London upgrade, referred to as EIP 1559. This was in August 2021. Here we are here. And this introduced a fee burning allocation so that a percentage or proportion of transaction fees were burnt. That had a net reduction effect on the number of circulation Ethereum, because it almost balanced out the Ethereum that was being produced with the number that were being burnt with fees. And certainly there were some periods when network activity and supply declined because the burn volume slightly exceeded the issuance volumes. The next change came with the merge in 2022, September to be exact, and that was the full transition from proof of work to proof of stake, or POS. Now, with this, massive changes came about in the issuance rate. They dropped roughly 90% from approximately 15,000 Ethereum a day right the way down to 1,500. Now, combine that with the burn fee from the London upgrade, and you could see that the resulting effects were deflationary, or at least near zero supply in the growth of Ethereum. And actually, over the next year or so, this averaged out at a net reduction in Ethereum supply of 0.16% per year. Now, since the merge, Ethereum during this period then became largely an overall deflationary, with the circulating supply, or supply available, gradually reducing. Then in March 2024 came Decon, the introduction of EIP 4844, which introduced proto-dank sharding. I know, put a number of geeks or programmers in a dark room for long enough, they're going to come up with something that sounds pretty disturbing. And all this really did was really allow for lowering the costs of a whole tranche of layer 2 data posting. The costs were reduced, the transaction fees were reduced, and consequently the burn rate was reduced. So as a result, issuance again started to outpace the burn rate, and the Ethereum volumes and numbers gradually started to increase. Now, this has been estimated at somewhere between 0.035 and 0.8% annually. The most recent change in the Ethereum platform is the recently deployed EIP 72517702, the Prague or Petra upgrade in May 2025. Very recent. Now, this has overall made very little difference to the emission policy. in terms of the supply. Overall, it remains modestly inflationary. The big question mark here is this upgrade was really intended to improve staking and wallet contracts, and it's the staking element which may and may not in the future lead to a deflationary period of Ethereum. Now the reason for that being it's network activity that leads to tokens being burnt, and as network activity increases, then the burn rate itself should increase, and there is potential, if this really starts taking off and the overall network activity both in Ethereum and the layer 2s starts expanding back to where it was, say 2021, then we could see a future period in which Ethereum becomes deflationary and the overall supply starts to reduce. Don't expect this to be a massive reduction. We're not going to see millions of tokens suddenly being burnt in this Ethereum network. So notable forks, there you have it, 2017 to 2021, the supply growth table summarized here, and the current status. Is it inflationary or deflationary? Well, because of the decurn upgrades, the effect on the reduced burn fee rates, Ethereum is now and continues to be at this time mildly inflationary, which means the supply of tokens is increasing at a rate of 0.3 to 0.8 of 1% annually. Now, what effect's that likely to have on the value, the retained value, the store of value in Ethereum? And the reason that I've got some concerns regarding that is the sudden increase in the number of companies that are looking towards Ethereum as a store of value and a treasury asset. Now, this is a double-edged one again, because Ethereum's a very different beast to Bitcoin in terms of its total supply and the effects of deflation and inflation that supply may have, but also it's that last upgrade, the Pectra upgrade, that made staking rewards more appealing, and that a lot of these companies are looking towards the revenue that they can generate through staking their Ethereum treasury assets as a potential form of income for their business. So there you have the total summary and the final verdict. Ethereum has moved through phases, both inflationary and deflationary, and fee burning really induced this deflationary move in the Ethereum supply, and the dynamics are, well, constantly shifting and in part depending on network activity. So time will tell, and we will see if Ethereum continues to grow or starts to actually shrink in its total supply. Let me know what you think in comments. I think this is an interesting one, and it's certainly one to watch, with Ethereum trading currently in the sort of 3,700 to 3,900 US dollar range mark. There's big potential for this to affect both the share values of some of these companies, but also the dynamics of how they're raising this capital to invest in Ethereum. And it will be very interesting to see how this plays out over the coming 5 to 10 years, because as we say, Ethereum's still a baby at only 10 years old. There's a lot of changes that the network could make with upgrades, forks, etc., which could really make a big difference in terms of how this pans out over the coming couple of years. Thanks for watching.